374 units. That is the number that shattered Meghan Markle's carefully constructed illusion of success. And now the entire internet is watching her scramble to explain how her supposedly sold-out lifestyle brand still had shelves full of unsold merchandise. The data was never supposed to go public. The stock tracking information that eagle-eyed internet sleuths uncovered painted a picture so dramatically different from the triumphant launch narrative that Meghan's team went into full panic mode within hours. And here is the delicious irony, folks. Their desperate attempts at damage control have only poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Let us be brutally honest about what happened here. Meghan Markle launched her as-ever lifestyle brand with all the fanfare of a royal coronation. The press releases gushed about overwhelming demand. Social media was flooded with carefully curated images of products flying off virtual shelves. Celebrity friends dutifully posted their endorsements. It was supposed to be the redemption story that finally proved the Duchess of Sussex could succeed on her own terms, away from the palace, away from the criticism, away from the constant comparisons to her sister-in-law. Instead, what we got was a masterclass in how not to launch a brand in the age of internet detectives. The specific numbers that leaked are absolutely devastating. According to retail tracking data that began circulating on social media, the actual sales figures bore almost no resemblance to the picture Meghan's team was painting. While official messaging suggested products were selling out faster than they could be restocked, the cold hard data showed inventory sitting untouched. Some items that were supposedly in high demand had moved fewer than 50 units. Others that were promoted as customer favorites had sales numbers in the low hundreds. For a brand backed by a global celebrity with millions of followers, these figures are not just disappointing, they are embarrassing. Sources familiar with retail analytics put it bluntly. One industry insider who reviewed the leaked data said these are the kind of numbers you would expect from a small independent seller, not from someone with Meghan's platform and resources. Another observer noted that the gap between the marketing and the reality is so wide you could drive a truck through it, and they are absolutely right. When your entire brand identity is built on authenticity and connection, getting caught inflating your success is not just bad business, it is a credibility catastrophe. The timing could not have been worse. As ever was supposed to represent Meghan's fresh start after the Spotify disaster, after the Netflix struggles, after all the whispers about the Sussexes being difficult to work with. This was her chance to prove the doubters wrong. Instead, within days of launching, she found herself trending for all the wrong reasons. The hashtags that dominated social media were not celebrating her entrepreneurial vision. They were mocking her apparent desperation to appear more successful than she actually was. But the leaked data was just the beginning of Meghan's problems, and her team's response would turn a manageable embarrassment into a full-blown viral scandal. The vision for As Ever was nothing short of grandiose. Meghan positioned it as a lifestyle brand that would embody everything she claimed to represent: authenticity, empowerment, elevated everyday living. The marketing materials spoke of carefully sourced products, meaningful partnerships, and a deeply personal connection to every item in the collection. This was not supposed to be just another celebrity vanity project. This was supposed to be Meghan's statement to the world that she could build something real, something lasting, something that would finally silence her critics once and for all. The launch itself was orchestrated with military precision. Influencer packages were sent to carefully selected tastemakers. Glossy magazine spreads appeared seemingly overnight. Meghan herself gave interviews where she spoke passionately about her creative process, about how each product told a story, about how she wanted to create things that brought joy to people's everyday lives. The messaging was relentless, and for a brief shining moment it seemed to be working. Pre-orders reportedly poured in. The website traffic was described as overwhelming. Everything was going according to plan. Then the internet did what the internet does best. It started digging. Eagle-eyed observers noticed discrepancies between what Meghan's team was saying and what the publicly available data suggested. Retail tracking tools that monitor e-commerce activity began painting a very different picture. Stock numbers that should have been declining if products were truly selling out remained stubbornly static. Inventory counts that were supposed to reflect overwhelming demand told a story of products sitting untouched. One particularly devastating screenshot showed a product that had been promoted as nearly sold out, still having over 300 units available. Allow me to translate what this means for those unfamiliar with retail analytics. When a brand claims its products are flying off the shelves, that claim can actually be verified. Modern e-commerce platforms leave digital footprints. Stock tracking tools can monitor inventory levels in real time, and when your public statements dramatically contradict what the data shows, you do not just have a sales problem, you have a trust problem. One retail analyst who has tracked numerous celebrity brand launches called it one of the most significant gaps between marketing and reality I have seen from a major celebrity brand. Another source with knowledge of the industry said brands live and die by credibility, and once you lose it, it is almost impossible to get back. The contrast between Meghan's carefully curated narrative and the emerging reality was stark enough to make viewers' heads spin. On one hand, you had her team talking about unprecedented interest and customer enthusiasm. On the other, you had cold, hard numbers suggesting that interest was far more modest than advertised. For a woman who has built her entire post-royal identity on speaking her truth and championing authenticity, getting caught in what appeared to be a significant exaggeration was nothing short of catastrophic. This pattern of reality clashing with public relations messaging has become disturbingly familiar for the Sussexes. The Spotify deal that promised revolutionary content but delivered a handful of episodes before being unceremoniously terminated. The Netflix partnership that was supposed to establish them as serious documentary filmmakers but has produced more headlines about what went wrong than about what succeeded. Time after time, the gap between what Harry and Meghan promise and what they deliver has become a recurring theme. And now, with As Ever, that pattern appeared to be repeating itself in real time for everyone to see. But the leaked data was just the beginning of Meghan's problems, and her team was about to make their first critical mistake that would transform a bad situation into a viral catastrophe. Within hours of the stock tracking data going viral, Meghan's team sprang into action. The official response came swift and sure, packed with the kind of corporate language designed to sound reassuring, while saying absolutely nothing of substance. A representative for As Ever released a statement dismissing the leaked figures as inaccurate and misleading. They claimed the tracking tools being cited were unreliable and did not reflect actual sales performance. They insisted that demand had exceeded expectations and that the brand was thrilled with its launch reception. On the surface, this sounded reasonable. But here is the problem, folks. They offered exactly zero evidence to back up their claims. Let that sink in for a moment. When confronted with specific numbers and verifiable data, Meghan's team responded with vague assurances and indignant denials. They did not release their own sales figures to contradict the leaked data. They did not provide any documentation showing the tracking tools were wrong. They simply expected everyone to take their word for it. And in the age of receipts and screenshots and internet sleuths who treat fact-checking like a competitive sport, that strategy was doomed from the start. The response drew immediate and brutal scrutiny. Critics pointed out that if the leaked figures were truly inaccurate, the simplest way to disprove them would be to release the real numbers. The fact that Meghan's team chose denial over transparency only fueled suspicion that the leaked data was closer to the truth than they wanted to admit. One commentator put it perfectly. When you are accused of exaggerating your success and your response is "trust me" without any proof, you have already lost the argument. Another observer noted that the defensiveness of the statement was telling. Confident brands welcome scrutiny because they have nothing to hide. The Streisand effect kicked in almost immediately. For those unfamiliar with the term, it refers to the phenomenon where attempting to suppress or deny information only draws more attention to it. By responding so aggressively to the leaked data, Meghan's team essentially confirmed that it had hit a nerve. The story that might have faded after a day or two of social media chatter suddenly had legs. News outlets that had ignored the initial leak now covered the controversy. Royal watchers who had been focused on other stories pivoted to analyzing the As Ever debacle. The harder her team tried to make this go away, the bigger it got. Specific language choices in the official response became fodder for additional mockery. The phrase "exceeded expectations" was seized upon by critics who asked what exactly those expectations were. If you expected to sell 50 units and you sold 51, you technically exceeded expectations. The statement's reference to unreliable tracking tools backfired when retail industry professionals pushed back, explaining that the tools in question were the same ones used by major corporations to monitor their own performance. One industry insider was quoted as saying those tracking methods are good enough for Fortune 500 companies but apparently not good enough for Meghan Markle. The attempt at damage control had achieved the exact opposite of its intended purpose. Instead of calming the waters, it had stirred them into a frenzy. Instead of providing reassurance, it had raised more questions. Instead of making Meghan look like a successful businesswoman, unfairly targeted by haters, it made her look like someone desperately trying to maintain an image that reality simply did not support. The gap between the confident denials and the absent proof became the story itself. And social media, that merciless judge and jury of modern celebrity, was not about to let her forget it. Meanwhile, someone close to the Sussexes was about to make things even more complicated, and the cracks in their carefully cultivated inner circle were starting to show. When controversy strikes in celebrity land, the first thing observers look for is how the inner circle responds. Do the famous friends rally to defend? Do the powerful allies issue statements of support? Do the celebrity connections show up with public endorsements designed to shore up a faltering reputation? In Meghan's case, the silence from her network of high-profile supporters has been absolutely deafening, and that silence speaks volumes about where things really stand. Sources close to Sussex World describe a growing sense of unease among those who have publicly aligned themselves with the couple in the past. One insider revealed that several celebrities who were initially approached to promote As Ever products have gone conspicuously quiet since the sales scandal erupted. Another source familiar with the situation claimed that phone calls from Meghan's team are suddenly not being returned with the same enthusiasm they once were. The bandwagon, it seems, is starting to lose its passengers. The pattern here is painfully familiar. Remember when Meghan launched her podcast on Spotify and a parade of famous friends showed up to participate? Where are those friends now? Remember when celebrity allies rushed to defend her after the Oprah interview? How many of them have spoken up during this latest crisis? The roster of public supporters seems to shrink with each new controversy, and those who remain are increasingly reluctant to put their own reputations on the line for someone whose ventures keep generating negative headlines. Let us be brutally honest about what is happening here. Celebrity friendships in Hollywood are often transactional. People align themselves with those who are ascending, who are generating positive buzz, who can help their own careers and images. When someone becomes associated with failure, with controversy, with constant negative coverage, the calculation changes. Suddenly those lunch dates become harder to schedule. Those public endorsements become harder to secure. Those famous faces that once populated your Instagram stop appearing quite so frequently. Reports suggest that brand partnerships and influencer relationships that were in discussions for As Ever have been quietly shelved since the scandal broke. One source with knowledge of the negotiations claimed that at least 2 major influencers who had agreed to promote the brand have asked to postpone their involvement until the controversy dies down. Another insider revealed that a potential retail partnership that seemed like a sure thing is now being reconsidered. When your business depends on the credibility of celebrity endorsements, having those celebrities suddenly develop cold feet is catastrophic. Perhaps most troubling are the whispers about internal tensions regarding who approved the launch strategy in the first place. Sources claim there is finger-pointing happening behind closed doors about who decided to make such bold claims about sales performance without having the receipts to back them up. The PR team reportedly believes the product team set unrealistic expectations. The product team allegedly feels the PR team overpromised what they could deliver. And caught in the middle of this blame game is Meghan herself, watching as the organization she built seems increasingly unable to present a unified front. But the real fallout was happening 3,000 miles away, where the institution Meghan and Harry left behind was watching this disaster unfold with a very particular kind of interest. Inside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, sources say the reaction to Meghan's latest PR disaster has been a mixture of weary resignation and quiet vindication. The working royals have watched the Sussexes lurch from controversy to controversy since their dramatic exit. And with each new crisis, the narrative about who was really the problem in that relationship becomes harder to dispute. One source close to the royal household described the mood as not surprised in the slightest. Another insider was more blunt. There is a reason things always seem to go wrong around those two. The contrast between how the working royals handle brand collaborations and the As Ever debacle could not be more stark. When the Princess of Wales partnered with fashion brands or supported British designers, the approach was understated, carefully managed, and focused on promoting others rather than personal profit. When King Charles championed organic products through his various initiatives, there were never questions about whether claims matched reality. The royal family, whatever criticisms one might level at them, understands something fundamental that Meghan apparently does not. Credibility is everything, and once you lose it, no amount of PR spin can bring it back. Reports continue to circulate about Prince Harry's alleged regrets regarding Megxit, and this latest scandal fits perfectly into that narrative. Multiple sources have claimed over the years that Harry sometimes questions whether leaving the royal family was the right decision. Whether those reports are accurate or palace propaganda depends on whom you ask. But what cannot be disputed is that the trajectory Harry and Meghan promised, the one where they would build a global empire of charitable work and media success, has not materialized in any meaningful way. Instead, they have lurched from one failed venture to another, all while watching his brother step into the role of future king with increasing confidence and public support. Let that sink in for a moment. Harry left the most famous family in the world, gave up his position, his relationships, his country, all to build something new with Meghan. And what do they have to show for it? A terminated Spotify deal, questionable Netflix ratings, a foundation that has shed most of its staff, and now a lifestyle brand caught in an embarrassing sales scandal before it even got off the ground. Meanwhile, his brother and sister-in-law are photographed at global events, undertake successful royal tours, and receive mostly positive coverage for their work. The comparison is brutal, and it is inescapable. The question of whether this scandal creates any opening for reconciliation or widens the divide is one that royal watchers are debating intensely. Some argue that each new Sussex failure actually makes reconciliation less likely because Harry would have to admit that Meghan's way was not working. Others suggest that reaching a point of genuine crisis might be exactly what is needed to force a reassessment of priorities. One source with alleged knowledge of royal thinking put it this way: the door is not closed, but Harry would need to walk through it alone first. Make of that what you will. What seems clear is that the palace is content to let this situation speak for itself. There will be no official comment, no gloating statements, no visible reaction at all. The royals have learned that when it comes to Harry and Meghan, the most effective strategy is simply to step back and let their own actions do the talking. And right now, those actions are speaking very, very loudly. But the financial implications were about to become impossible to ignore, and the true cost of this scandal was just beginning to come into focus. Following the money in Sussex world has become something of a cottage industry for royal watchers, and what the numbers reveal is deeply concerning. The Montecito mansion alone reportedly costs millions per year to maintain, between mortgage payments, staff salaries, security costs, and the general upkeep required for an estate of that size. The income streams that were supposed to support this lifestyle have dried up one by one. And now, with as ever stumbling out of the gate, the pressure on their finances has never been more intense. Let us do some brutal math here. The Spotify deal that was reportedly worth $25 million ended in mutual dissatisfaction after producing minimal content. The Netflix partnership, while still technically active, has not generated the kind of hit content that would justify the reported $100 million investment. Book sales from Harry's memoir have slowed dramatically after the initial rush. Speaking engagements, once touted as a major income source, have reportedly become harder to book as corporations grow wary of the Sussex brand of controversy. Where exactly is the money supposed to come from? Industry experts are questioning whether As Ever can recover from a launch controversy of this magnitude. One brand strategist interviewed about the situation said launching with controversy is not necessarily fatal, but launching with credibility questions about your honesty is much harder to overcome. Another expert in celebrity ventures noted that the lifestyle brand space is incredibly crowded, and without strong initial momentum, it is very difficult to break through the noise. The window for As Ever to establish itself as a legitimate player in this market may already be closing. Sources claim that the couple's overhead continues to be staggering. Security alone reportedly runs into millions annually. Staff costs, travel expenses, the general lifestyle expected of people who present themselves as royalty in exile, none of it is cheap. And without the endless wealth of the royal institution backing them, every failed venture represents not just a public embarrassment, but a genuine financial setback. One insider with alleged knowledge of their situation described it as a treadmill they cannot get off. They need to keep producing content and launching products just to maintain what they have. The pressure this puts on Harry's future ventures cannot be overstated. There has been speculation about a second memoir, one that would reportedly go even further in revealing palace secrets. But here is the problem. Harry has already played most of his best cards. The revelations about royal life, the personal grievances, the behind-the-scenes drama, much of it has already been shared. A second book would need to offer something substantially new to generate the kind of sales that the first one achieved. And publishers, burned by authors who failed to deliver on promised bombshells, are increasingly cautious about advance payments. The simple reality is that the Sussex business model, such as it is, was built on the assumption of success. High-profile deals with major corporations, successful product launches, positive media coverage that would reinforce their image as the good royals who escaped a toxic institution. What they have instead is a series of embarrassing failures, constant negative coverage, and a brand that is becoming synonymous with overpromising and under-delivering. That is not a foundation you can build a sustainable business on. Then the internet delivered its most brutal verdict yet, and the viral response to this scandal would make everything that came before look like a gentle warm-up. Social media can be merciless to public figures who are perceived as inauthentic, and the response to Meghan's sales scandal has been absolutely savage. Within hours of the stock tracking data going viral, the memes had begun. Screenshots comparing the official claims to the leaked numbers, photoshopped images mocking the gap between marketing and reality, video compilations set to comedic music showing Meghan's confident launch interviews alongside the devastating data. The creativity of internet trolls, when they have a target this ripe, is genuinely impressive. The hashtags that dominated the conversation painted a brutal picture. Tags mocking As Ever trended alongside more pointed commentary about Sussex credibility in general. One particularly viral tweet, viewed millions of times, simply showed the leaked stock numbers next to a clip of Meghan talking about overwhelming demand, with the caption "Make it make sense." Another popular post compiled every time Meghan had spoken about authenticity and truth-telling alongside the apparent exaggeration of her sales success. The hypocrisy angle was irresistible to critics who had been waiting for exactly this kind of ammunition. TikTok, that engine of viral content for younger audiences, was particularly brutal. Video after video appeared dissecting the scandal, explaining the stock tracking data in accessible terms, and questioning how a woman who built her brand on being real could allegedly be so fake about something as basic as sales numbers. One TikTok with over 5 million views featured a creator walking through the evidence point by point, concluding with the devastating observation she literally did not need to lie about this, and that is what makes it so bizarre. Another video showing a side-by-side comparison of claims versus data accumulated millions of views before the creator even had time to respond to comments. Prominent royal watchers weighed in with analysis that only amplified the damage. Commentators who have built substantial followings covering Sussex drama produced lengthy breakdowns of the scandal, examining not just the numbers but what they revealed about the broader pattern of Sussex behavior. One particularly influential royal commentator described it as the most embarrassing unforced error of their post-royal careers. Another noted that the scandal had crossed over from royal watching circles into mainstream conversation in a way that previous controversies had not achieved. The contrast between Meghan's carefully cultivated image and how she is being portrayed now could not be more dramatic. For years, she has presented herself as someone who values truth above all else, who speaks authentically, who refuses to play games with public perception. Her famous interview with Oprah was built on the premise that she was finally telling her truth after years of palace suppression. Her podcast explored themes of authenticity and female empowerment. Her entire brand identity rested on the foundation of being genuine in a world of artifice, and now, fairly or not, that foundation has been cracked by allegations that she was not being honest about something as simple as how many products she was selling. Let that sink in. All those speeches about truth, all those interviews about authenticity, all that positioning as someone different from the calculating royals she left behind. And the thing that might ultimately define her brand is getting caught allegedly exaggerating sales numbers like a desperate Instagram influencer padding their engagement statistics. The irony is so thick you could cut it with one of her overpriced lifestyle brand knives. But some observers noticed a much darker pattern emerging, and the implications of this scandal extended far beyond embarrassing stock counts. This is not the first Sussex PR disaster we have witnessed, and the troubling reality is that the same strategic mistakes keep being repeated. Consider the pattern. A venture launches with enormous hype and bold claims about its significance. Initial coverage is carefully managed to maximize positive impressions. Then reality fails to match the marketing. And when questions arise, the response is defensive denial rather than transparent acknowledgement. We have seen this cycle play out with Spotify. We have seen it with various Netflix projects. We have seen it with Archwell initiatives that promised more than they delivered. And now we are seeing it again with As Ever. The question that royal watchers and business analysts alike are asking is why these mistakes keep happening. Surely after the Spotify debacle, after the criticism of Netflix content, after all the negative coverage they have received, someone in Sussex world would have learned to underpromise and overdeliver rather than the reverse. Surely someone would have warned against making claims that could be easily fact-checked. Surely someone would have counseled a more humble launch strategy that did not invite the exact kind of scrutiny that has now materialized. And yet here we are again. Speculation about who exactly is advising Meghan has intensified since the scandal broke. The couple has churned through PR representatives and strategic advisors at a remarkable rate over the years. Staff departures have become so common that tracking them has become a hobby for Sussex watchers. The obvious question is whether the constant turnover means that institutional knowledge and hard-learned lessons are being lost with each departure. One source familiar with communication strategy put it bluntly: it is like they are reinventing the wheel every 6 months, and each time they make the same mistakes because nobody sticks around long enough to say we tried that and it did not work. The psychological toll of this constant cycle of hype, failure, and criticism must be considerable. Regardless of one's personal opinion of Meghan Markle, it is impossible not to recognize that living under this level of scrutiny while watching venture after venture generate negative headlines would be exhausting for anyone. Sources have previously claimed that both Harry and Meghan find the constant criticism deeply affecting. But here's the thing, folks. When your response to that criticism is to double down on strategies that have already failed, you create a self-perpetuating cycle of disaster. There is a version of events where the Sussexes could have built something genuinely successful, a modest charitable foundation doing meaningful work without the grandiose pronouncements, content partnerships focused on quality rather than quantity, and hype, a lifestyle brand launched with honest expectations and transparent metrics. All of this was possible, but it would have required something that seems increasingly beyond their capabilities: the willingness to be humble, the discipline to underpromise, the wisdom to build credibility slowly, rather than demanding it immediately. Instead, what we have witnessed is a pattern of behavior that seems almost compulsive: the need to project massive success, the inability to acknowledge limitations, the defensive posture whenever reality fails to match the image. It is not just bad strategy. At this point, it looks like something deeper, something that no number of PR advisors can fix, because the problem is not the advice. The problem is the inability to follow it. Which brings us to the question everyone is now asking, and the answer may determine whether the Sussex brand has any future at all. The simple truth is that a stock count blunder that should have been a minor embarrassment has exposed fundamental vulnerabilities in everything Harry and Meghan have tried to build since leaving the royal family. The As Ever scandal is not just about inflated sales claims, it is about a pattern of presentation over substance, of image over reality, of demanding to be seen as successful rather than doing the hard work of actually becoming successful. And the internet, that brutal enforcer of accountability, is not going to let them forget it. What happens next is anyone's guess. There are essentially two paths forward. Meghan could double down, dismiss the criticism as more evidence of the unfair targeting she has long complained about, and continue with As Ever as if nothing happened. This approach has the advantage of not requiring any admission of wrongdoing, but it risks further eroding credibility with each new venture that fails to meet expectations. Alternatively, she could pivot entirely. Acknowledge that the launch did not go as planned, provide actual transparency about sales figures, reset expectations to something more modest and achievable. This path is harder for someone who has built her identity on never backing down, but it might be the only way to salvage any remaining credibility. The smart money is not betting on humility. Everything we have seen from the Sussexes suggests they are constitutionally incapable of admitting mistakes in any meaningful way. Criticism is always unfair. Failures are always someone else's fault. The pattern of behavior is so consistent at this point that expecting a dramatic change feels naive. More likely, we will see continued defensive posturing, attempts to change the subject, and eventually another venture launched with the same grandiose promises that invite the same devastating scrutiny. Whether this represents a genuine turning point or just another chapter in ongoing drama depends largely on whether the Sussexes themselves are capable of learning from their mistakes. The evidence so far suggests they are not. Each controversy leads not to reflection but to entrenchment. Each failure generates not reassessment but blame shifting. Each opportunity for genuine course correction is squandered in favor of maintaining an image that reality increasingly refuses to support. The lifestyle brand that was supposed to prove Meghan could succeed on her own terms has instead provided further proof that success requires more than celebrity and ambition. It requires credibility. It requires delivering on promises. It requires the kind of authentic connection to customers that cannot be manufactured through careful PR. And based on everything we have seen, those are exactly the qualities that remain in shortest supply in Montecito. Do you think As Ever can survive this scandal? Or is this the beginning of the end for Meghan's business ambitions? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.